Failure should be our teacher, not our undertaker. Failure is delay, not defeat. It is a temporary detour, not a dead end. Failure is something we can avoid only by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
And here we are at the Better Humanology Podcast. My name is Jerred Moon, and with me, as always, is Talon Schwam. What's up, Talon?
Hey, Jerred. Hey, everyone.
So we are Season 2, Episode 6, and happy to be here. Always happy to be here. Glad
Season
you're here.
2 is just awesome.
I'm loving Season 2. I'm having a lot of fun with it, man. It's,
Me too.
It is actually pushing me quite a bit more to be better with all of the little challenges and books and all the stuff that we're doing. But I love prepping for these podcasts, getting ready for them, and then, of course, hashing it out with my man. All right.
That's right.
All right, so let's go over last week a little bit, some recap. So last week I threw down the EO3 5K challenge, got to do that up in New York. That was really cool. Hopefully, if anyone else did the EO3 5K...
Good on you.
Yeah, good on you. EO3 5K, new habit. Did you pick up a new habit over this last week?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily, I shouldn't say probably a new habit. It's newer than how it's been recently. Ever since we had my daughter, I haven't really been doing much reading other than like looking up online and reading, fun stuff. But yeah, this week I got back into the old school, no Audible this for me yet, but the old reading game of reading to learn again. So
I know some people are anti-audiobook. They got to have it in their hand. Are you anti-audiobook or you just prefer?
No, I'm absolutely not anti-audiobook. My wife's doing audio or doing Audible. I mean, her twin's doing Audible. Shout out there. I know some other people that picked up Audible just from listening to the show, but I'm definitely not anti. I'm just I'm one of those analog kind of guys. It's like, I gotta feel it. I'm one of those salts of the earth kind of people.
I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but there's a study that came out. If you have the audiobook and the book, so you're like listening to it while you're reading it, going through the pages. Like,
wow. You're
supposed to comprehend like 50% more or something than you normally do if you're reading it. So,
but you're paying 100% more. Right?
Yeah, that's what it's like. Every book will cost you twice as much if you start doing that. But I want to try it on on a book that I really enjoy. I picked up not a new habit. I guess I'm bringing back an old habit because writing. I write a lot. Have in the past and do. Like on my site, I'm writing. Had a book come out this year and all that other stuff. But also running my business has kind of taken me away from doing some of the things I love, like writing. And so my new habit that I picked back up. I'm always writing some, but I wanted to make it, a little more habitual. And
Sure.
So just 500 plus words every single day, 7 days a week. And I've stuck to it. And because of that, I actually have like a 2,000 plus word article all about Murph that is being published the same day that this podcast is published. And so,
all right,
that's out there. And so I really enjoy writing, and I'm glad that got back into my daily routine.
Speaking of Murph, though, I mean, I know you were doing a little bit more running this week. But I know you got injured last time we talked about it. Are you still doing Murphs, or are you kind of taking a break from Murph?
No, man, I'm doing Murph every single week. This past week, I did post on my Instagram. I did stroller Murph.
Okay.
I pushed William on the miles, and then did strict ring pull-ups because I was traveling this past week, so I was with my family doing what I could do. But yeah, man, pushed that kid in a stroller up some gnarly hills and got in the calisthenics and then pushed him in the stroller again. He loved it. He had a great time.
That kid's no joke too. That's probably a little extra harder on the workout because he's a pretty big boy.
Yeah, he made it somewhat difficult.
Yeah.
But it was fun. He, like I said, he had a great time, and I love exposing him to things like that because he's obviously not working out at all,
Right.
but he's a part of it, and he's only 4 years old, and I love to just put that influence in his life where it's something that he knows about, and he understands, and hopefully it'll be a part of his life when he grows up.
It's not just about making ourselves better. It's about making those around us better, right? It includes the kids.
I'd say a large part of my life is way more about making them better than it is about me being any better. All right, man, and I do want to make one announcement for all of the Into 3 fitness peeps out there because I have a new program coming out, and it is our Shred program. Some people have known about this. They've heard about it, but I did put together an ebook that you can download for free, and then also if you enter in your email on this page, you'll be able to you get notified about the program when it opens up because we probably won't open it up to a lot of people, so you'd have to be on this list. But if you go to into3fitness.com/shred, just one word, you can go ahead and download that ebook. It's kind of long. Download the ebook and read about the program, and if it's something you want to be a part of, then definitely go sign up for that.
Yeah, I also want to ask how your compliments challenge went this past week.
I treat you kind of like a leprechaun at times.
Like a what?
A leprechaun.
Oh no.
Where like I'm very careful about like exactly what you said, and so I actually went back. I was like, I knew it was a compliment. I was like, what exactly did he say? Like, do I have to? I couldn't remember if it was a compliment like a bunch of people or just one person, but it was really just like compliment one person that you come in contact with, and it could be something really small. So yes, I complimented my mother-in-law this past week, which is actually a suggestion. You said you said it could be your in-laws or whatever, and I was visiting with my in-laws, and so I did. I gave her a compliment, and just
how'd it go?
It went well. I mean, everyone likes a compliment, right?
They do, and I bet you anything that relationship grew just that much more. I mean, who knows if it was an inch or
maybe it was tenfold.
Maybe you just never know, right?
Yeah. How about you?
The impact we have on people, you just never know. I didn't come in contact with a lot of people this last week.
You like compliment your wife or something?
Always, every day, constantly. She knows that. If she's listening to this, oh man, she's smiling because that's something I try and live by. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I just feel like is so important in life. I feel like it's so important to try and just, maybe it's not karma, but it's like you give it to try and not necessarily get it, but just kind of to keep it going. It's almost that like, what do they call it? Like pay it forward. I try to live by that as much as possible. And, I'm probably not the greatest at it by any means, but absolutely. But I didn't see a lot of people this week. I've been really taking hold of that, reins of being the daddy at home right now. So, and working pretty hardcore at night. So,
all right. So we complimented some people this week. What you got for us this week? What are you challenging us to do this week?
Oh, this week it's a banger. It's a banger. Okay, so it's funny. I won't get into the backstory, I guess, but this is something me and Jerred talked about way early in season 1. I wrote a big article about it, but we decided never to publish it. But there's a lot of research on there about how trying to do multiple things at once really hurts your brain, makes you worse at doing the things that you're trying to do. It creates gray matter in your brain and whatnot. So my challenge for this week is, unless you're doing something mindless and you're listening to an audiobook on Audible or something like that, I'll be okay with it. Try not to multitask. So no multitasking this week. No, trying to do multiple things at once, unless it's something like you're listening to, an audiobook while you're doing the dishes or mowing the lawn or driving to work. Okay, I promise you'll probably be like less tired because of it. You'll feel better, more energetic, all kinds of good things.
I'm all about that challenge because I know, honestly, I hate having a split focus at any moment in the day, and so challenge accepted.
All right,
man. So I'll hop into what I got for people this week. Fitness challenge. This one's gonna be a fun one. 400 meters. Walking lunges. So a quarter mile of walking lunges. Just do a full quarter mile. Pretty simple. A great time to Corey Gregory, who he's behind the Squat Every Day program, if anybody's heard of that stuff. But he calls it, this is the first time I heard it, was Lunge University. And so what he does is he actually puts in his headphones and walks 400 meters or more, doing walking lunges while listening to an audiobook or a podcast. I mean, hey, maybe given your situation, and if you're listening to this podcast right now, maybe just go outside and go ahead and knock out the 400 meters worth of lunges while you're listening to this. It shouldn't take you longer than this episode is. Such a fitness challenge. It will be painful, but it'll be fun.
It'll make you better.
It will make you better. And then the mental toughness challenge this week. So we had Dr. Rob Bell, a sports psychologist, on a while back, and he had an amazing quote, something I really liked, and he said, if you want to get better, if you want to be good at something, you need to add things to your life, or you need to take on new habits, new whatever. But he said, if you want to be great, you really have to find out what in your life do you have to take away.
Ooh.
And I love that. If you guys are interested, just flip back to the Dr. Rob Bell episode. I believe it was episode 28, and you go listen to him. He's a great dude that I keep in touch with to this day. But that is actually my mental toughness challenge this week, is to take something away from yourself, because it'll challenge you mentally, depending on what it is. Maybe it's a vice, maybe it's a bad habit, maybe it's coffee, maybe it doesn't really matter what it is. If you can withhold, and just kind of fight your impulses to do something.
Yeah.
It's going to make you more mentally tough and definitely challenge you.
I love that one so much because that goes right, it just interlocks well with mine. You're going to stop something, then hopefully you're doing one less thing, right? So you're probably a little easier to not to multitask.
It's almost like we planned it. Which we totally didn't, though. All right, so book. I'm going to be, the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks possibly, I'll be recommending some of my favorite books because, like I said, I'm listening to that 24 plus hour ebook or audiobook right now.
Right.
And so we've actually talked about this book on the podcast before. We had an entire episode more or less on the concept behind this book, and that is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Definitely, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you already know I recommend this book, and so go grab it, listen to it. I mean, this one easily, after I read it, snuck into my top 5 books, of all time, and I definitely love it. If you're not familiar with the premise of extreme ownership, it's essentially extremely taking responsibility of your life and your actions, and not only that, how you influence everything. Really, it's one of the biggest points, or the biggest thing, because extreme ownership, Tal and I've talked about extreme ownership. We both kind of got through our military experience. Like it is kind of a principle that about if you're in the military, but one thing that never clicked with me was having ownership like up the chain of command. Because normally if something comes from the top down, you don't really question it or too much. Like maybe you can play with it a little bit, but ultimately if you have your orders, you do what you're told. And he talks about that, like specifically, how to lead up the chain of command and take ownership for decisions that aren't even your own. That kind of stuff just blew my mind. And one of the things I just wanted to read a short passage from the book. And like I said, you can get this book on Amazon or you can get it on Audible. I love the book on Audible because the guys who read the audio book are actually Jocko himself and Leif, and they both have like the most badass voices like on the planet. And so it's a really fun book to even listen to. So I highly recommend you do that. And if you want to get it for free, you can go to audibletrial.com/betterhuman. So one more time, that's audibletrial.com/betterhuman, and get this book right away. All right, so here's a quick, on the chapter, the principle, there are no bad teams, there are only bad leaders. Leaders should never be satisfied. They must always strive to improve, and they must build that mindset into the team. They must face the facts through a realistic, brutally honest assessment of themselves and their team's performance. Identifying weaknesses, good leaders seek to strengthen them and to come up with a plan to overcome challenges. The best teams anywhere, like the SEAL teams, are constantly looking to improve. add capability, and push the standards higher. It starts with the individual and spreads to each of the team members until it becomes the culture, the new standard. The recognition that there are no bad teams, only bad leaders, facilitates extreme ownership and enables leaders to build high-performance teams that dominate on any battlefield, literal or figurative. So yeah, I just wanted to read that because that was another awesome point from the book. Like if you think that it's your subordinates that are causing you problems in leadership, that's probably not true. It's probably you, especially if you're the leader. And I, like I said, I can't say enough. I love that book. Go get it. All right, man. So those are all my challenges. We have two pretty interesting and what I say. I mean, they don't necessarily coincide, but definitely two topics that we'll be going over this evening that can make you better. And I think that we should start with yours, and then we can close with what I want to talk about. Well, I mean, what we're going to be going over, go ahead and drop the topics. So Talon's going to be discussing analogies. I brought some research to the table, and he has his, and we're going to talk about how, not just analogies, but, and I'm not going to get into it further, I'll let him do it, but how they can make you a better human, and why. And it's a very interesting concept. When Talon first brought it up to me, I was like, oh, that's, at first I was like, man, that, really? But like after he explained it, I was like, that's pretty awesome. Let's definitely talk about that on the podcast. And then at the end, once we get to kind of what I want to talk about is I'm actually just going to read a story about me failing at something, and how it's brought me to where I am today. And I mean, a big reason why I'm speaking into this microphone, a big reason that Into 3 Fitness exists, all stems from this one story. So I'll read that here in a minute. But man, let's get it kicked off with some analogies.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you're a common listener to the show, then you hear analogies as something I thought up that we needed to talk about. And you're probably like, well, duh, Talon talks analogies all the freaking time. And it's really not, it's almost like a reflex now for me. And so,
or if you didn't notice,
start
to pay attention to Talon on the podcast, and you'll realize that his mind operates in analogies.
It really, I don't know where that came from, but it's just, for me, it's always been something that I've been drawn to, maybe trying to just relate to people. But
I do want to share one funny story about you and analogies. It's more of a concept. So Talon communicates. I mean, obviously we're talking all the time off the podcast, and he always communicates to me in analogies. Like when I don't even need, like I might fully understand it, but he's still going to give me like an analogy to help me understand it even better. And then But what will happen is I'll try to, I know Talon, so sometimes I'll try to communicate back in analogies, but I normally use references that I feel like he would best understand, because I can't give some like, CrossFit games analogy or something like, you wouldn't get it. And so I try to speak in your analogies, and then you often tell me how my analogies are not really applicable because like I picked the wrong sports icon or like the wrong era and time or something. So, I mean, he's the analogy stickler and guru. So we'll just throw that caveat in there before we even get started.
Yeah, I do get picky with semantics probably a little bit. And if you're throwing the wrong words around an analogy, I'm probably gonna get a little ticked off. But it's funny for me because I was going through a class. It was about a year ago now, and they came out and said, "Hey, what they just found out? They found out that using analogies and metaphors in your daily life, people that use them more often were less likely to develop dementia and therefore, or have dementia and develop Alzheimer's." And so for me, I was like, what? That's amazing. I'll probably never have to worry about Alzheimer's anymore. But it's crazy because when I really started thinking about it and breaking it down, like I told you, it's just like a reflex. It's like something that I just do just all the time. And I don't really understand why. I never did. But then I started breaking down, researching for this show and figuring out that, it really does a lot for your brain. What analogies does is it creates new neural pathways in your brain. And that's kind of like, I like to liken it kind of to athletes, when they try to do new exercises or play other sports, how that kind of creates, new reflexes and uses different muscles that they otherwise wouldn't use maybe in their own frame of reference. I like to talk about guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, Hall of Fame basketball player, grew up his whole life playing soccer until like the age 13 or 14. And he talks about how that helped him really with not only with the sport and using like different cutting lanes and things, but also with his footwork and a lot of different kind of mannerisms he'd use when he was posting up. And so I really thought that was really interesting how how that does that for your brain. And they talk about how that helps with like Alzheimer's because it keeps your brain really more active because you're always having to try and it's like problem solving. If you're explaining an analogy, then you're having to kind of problem solve that extra few steps in your head to be able to explain it to people that much better, that much more clearly. You're trying to have to make new connections in your head that way. So for me, I was just baffled. I have some more stats on here. Like how rampant Alzheimer's is now, like in the country, there's 44 million people worldwide with Alzheimer's. It happens to 1 in 9 Americans that are over the age of 65. So for me, it's like, I want to spread the word. I want to get people out there using as many analogies as possible. I mean, because there's lots of other ways, of course you can exercise more and have a good diet. We've talked about those things on the show plenty though.
Yeah. They say healthy fats can help reduce Alzheimer's risk.
Yeah, I know. I was reading an article about antioxidants, and it's like, yeah, maybe those will really help fight off Alzheimer's. But, you don't have to do a whole lot. I mean, honestly, if you're going to try and use an analogy, I think it's just being mindful when you're explaining something or when you're trying to understand something and just bringing it out to people and just kind of using the power of conversation to help keep your brain active and make you smarter.
And I think what I love about this specifically, the first thing I love is the fact that you used an analogy to describe analogies, which was epic. If no one caught that, I definitely did. But the other thing is, it's mental. It's a mental workout. It might not be for you anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to really push yourself to like maybe think of a complicated analogy to like really push your brain, just because you do operate in analogies so much. But I think what I like to call exercises like this, just in my own head, is it's like a mental toughness primer. Sure. Because, I'm really big on mental toughness and practicing that and talking about it. I love all that stuff. But anything that makes your brain just the slightest bit uncomfortable, even if it's just thinking of like how to explain something, in an analogy, that's mental toughness primer. I don't think it's necessarily a mental toughness practice, but it's like it's getting your brain in this conditioned state to do things that it's not 100% comfortable with. Yeah. And there are a lot of different ways to do that, but I think analogies is definitely a great one, or anything that's going to push you to create new neural pathways.
I mean, using analogies for me is probably like using barbells for you. Mr. Barbell and Mr. Analogy here. But I feel like there's a whole lot of, other than, I think you're totally on par right there with, it just kind of gets your mind ready for kind of using it in more challenging ways. But I kind of alluded to it earlier. I really feel like I've traveled around a lot. I mean, I was a military brat growing up, and then I joined the military later on. So I've been to multiple different countries, and I've met people from all over the place. And I feel like maybe that's why I try to use analogies so often, is because I've had to move so many times and just assimilate to so many different groups and adapt and overcome to so many different environments, that I feel like maybe my only way I could relate with people was to become a master almost of trying to figure out and explain things so that we're all on the same page. But that's something I feel like it really helps you with. The more and more often you use analogies, the more and better you're able to communicate with people and help teach people things that you feel like you already understand in your own mind better. But I really think it's just such an awesome benefit. I mean, if I was reading this thing, it was talking about some activities you can do if you want to, help prevent some of those, those later in life issues like Alzheimer's. And it's like, that's the biggest takeaway for me, is like, you don't want Alzheimer's. It's so rampant, right? 1 in 9, right?
I'm gonna title this podcast "The Alzheimer's Cure."
You should. You should. Nobody wants Alzheimer's. It's really sad. You can see them there, but they're like a shell of themselves. Anyway, but it's like, you can do things like reading, playing puzzle games, and having like social interaction stuff. And they used to have stuff like visiting museums and doing all that often. They say can make you 47% less likely to have Alzheimer's. But if what it comes down to is keeping your brain active. And it doesn't have to be as challenging as it sounds, like, spending money to go into museums or buying a bunch of puzzles or whatever it is. If you're being mindful about how you're using your time that you're thinking, instead of just replacing it with mindless, activities and, going, I think I talk about this all the time, going, to sit down in front of the TV and turn it on, just turning your brain off, then, you're not doing anything for yourself, especially not in the long run. You're probably taking years off your life. So if you can replace that with just doing analogies and just trying to think about new things in different ways, then you're really, really making yourself better and benefiting yourself.
So I'm the practical guy.
Yeah.
So give me some practical tips here. If I wanted to, is it just...
This is great.
Obviously, you could just say, well, just use an analogy today. But give me some sort of practical tip, or maybe even like a challenge almost that we did at the beginning of the podcast, something I could do. Because I'll actually practice it this week. I take this podcast very seriously and these actions and the topics that we're talking about. So I'll try it. So give me some sort of practical tip.
Well, I think everybody has their own uniqueness. Everybody is they're not an expert on something, probably, if it's something that you're best at, but you're probably more proficient than most at it, right? Everybody has their thing. And so if you can somehow relate something somebody's explaining to you, to your thing, and break it down a little bit, then it might help you. So if, like, my thing for a lot of years was basketball, right? I feel like I was born and bred in a basketball family, and I played, all the way up to college. And I feel like that was something that I could always relate to almost anything. I feel like I could relate leadership concepts, or just life concepts, or failures, or challenges, or, anything, relationships. I could always relate, it's kind of like the relationship with the point between the point guard and the center, that point guard has to really feed him, the ball, and the center has to feel like he's involved. We're talking about, like a romantic relationship, kind of relating to a basketball kind of scenario. But it doesn't need to be sports. And I like to use sports probably more often than I should, just because I'm a sports kind of guy. But you can use anything. If you're vice versa, that's if you're trying to understand something for yourself better. You want to relate to something that But if it's talking to somebody else, you want to try and, hopefully a little bit about them, or you talk about something that's universal, but relate something to what they know, what about them. Like what, if I know Jerred's, a barbell guy. Jerred's big on, he's eat better, be stronger, faster, right? And so sometimes I try to relate things to him in that sense. I don't probably succeed all the time. So sometimes I'll try to get like political or whatever, because I know Jerred's a real intelligent dude. So I can probably use all kinds of things to relate to him. But and so it's easier if you're talking to someone that you feel like knows a lot about the world. But really, it's not that difficult. I feel like if you just try and use something that's either, widely known, or you just, relate to something that people know about.
All right, man. I'm going to give it a try. And, you mentioned earlier, was it museums, puzzles, and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I wrote an article a long time ago. This was just neuroplasticity, which I think it's similar.
It is.
Because, challenging your brain to create those new neural pathways, and like I said, it's mental toughness primer, right? It's like anything that's going to challenge your brain. And so I did jot down some different ideas. It has nothing to do with analogies, but some other things that might just like challenge your brain in the same way that are like really easy to do. Because I wanted your practical tip, because if I'm talking about anything, I'm going to go down to the practical level. And so I want to give some practical tips for everyone out there. And some people have probably heard this stuff before, but brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, which is like a really easy way to do it. Writing or memorizing a small passage or something like that. I think writing is a great way to do it. If you don't write, like how I mentioned that, analogies might not be super, like it's not like probably like, it's probably good for you, but it's not like a mental workout for you anymore to come up with an analogy. And like writing for me, since I do write often, even though I just picked that habit up since I've written so much over the years, and that one might not work for me. But if you don't write already, I highly recommend you get into the habit of writing or journaling or something. It's very, very valuable.
As well.
Driving, try taking a new route to work, just going like a completely different way. Maybe leave early if it's going to take longer, but do it anyway. And then this one I would love to just like see people do, because like I'm a pretty structured guy, and so just changing your routine in the morning. I'm talking about like, I'm not talking about like a daily ritual. Like we've talked about that stuff. I'm just talking about like your routine that everyone has. You know, whether it's get up, use the bathroom, make coffee, like whatever sequence of events you do in the morning, just completely change it like upside down. Like wake up, immediately go, you know, have your cup of coffee, even though that might be out of order, and then, you know, just like completely screw that up and see how you feel that day. You might feel awful, but it's going to challenge your brain to create those new neural pathways and do something that's just a little bit uncomfortable.
I really like that. I think those things definitely, when we talk about neuroplasticity, like creating new neural pathways and, you know, help your brain grow and be stimulated. For me with analogies, I'm just so biased. I feel like it's almost, you know, how they say like when you teach something, you learn more about it than if you're a student, you know, that you become more proficient if you're the one teaching. Like you learn more than you usually would. Well, I
agree with that 100%. Yeah, I think that's almost like a good tip in and of itself. Is I do think that if you, even if you don't understand something that well, but you give someone that exercise, if you're like, explain this to me as if you're teach me this, like if you don't know it, that really pushes you mentally. Like,
right.
And,
right.
Yeah. So I agree.
So that's kind of what my, I guess, last takeaway is that using analogies kind of puts you, if you're trying to explain something in that sense, because it can be either you're trying to explain something or you're trying to understand something. So it can be, you know, both ways. But if you're trying to explain something, it puts you in that teacher role, and therefore it helps you become not just, you know, creating new pathways to keep your brain active. It makes you smarter as well, because you're having to figure out new ways to understand things on your own, usually around the spot right there. So it not only, you know, keeps your brain going, but it expands the capacity of your knowledge, right?
All right, man. Well, now I get to read, you know, not as uppity up here. I'm about to read Failure.
Sad
Failure.
story.
It's not sad. Well, no, it probably is kind of sad.
It's not sad anymore because you got through it.
You know, and it's really not that big of a deal, but I think it's interesting how it relates to my life now. And this is what I talked about writing a lot on the show. Inadvertently, this show I've talked about writing a lot. Maybe this is the reason, you know, subconsciously, is I think that writing is so valuable. Either whether you start a blog or like a personal journal, something on your computer, maybe a notebook, it's so amazing to be able to go back. Because at Into 3 Fitness, I've never written like I don't write like a journal. You know, they're mostly like, you know, public articles, research, trying to help people in some way, shape, or form. But I can still go back to my older articles, either where I've shared something personal or just read that article and see where I was at that time. It's always cool to reflect. And recently I went really far back and I shared a story on one of my articles, and I want to share it again today because it's so interesting that how far that initial failure or loss, it's really just a loss, has come. And so I'm just going to read it, and then maybe we could talk about, you know, losing and failure and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like to admit it, but I have failed, and I will fail again. My first failure shock. When I was in high school, I ran track. I never really put that much effort into running. I was just a fast kid, and I always had been. I was fast enough to run the 100-meter and 200-meter. When things come easy, you never really put in the effort. You don't realize the value of hard work. Well, I found out how hard I wasn't working. One day, my coach came up to me and a few of the guys who would run the 200-meter in the upcoming track meet. Keep in mind, I was a skinny, small white kid. I was just fast enough to be on the team, but not fast enough to win any of the meets. Anyway, he said he could only take you, pointing at me, or you, pointing at some new guy who had just transferred to my high school.
Ooh, new guy.
I was already taken back that I could possibly not be running in the meet, and worse, that some new guy may be taking my spot. The coach said that the race would be right now, and the race would be a 100-meter curve only. Because running the curve and on the track is the trickiest part of the 200-meter, and my coach only cared about who could run it well. So we're just running, if you're familiar with a quarter-mile track, just that little, the curve part. We were only racing the curve. Honestly, I wasn't too worried before we started. We both put on our spikes and lined up for the race. Coach started us off, and we were both running as fast as we could. I thought the race was going well because I couldn't see my opponent in my peripheral at all. I figured I had it. However, as soon as the curve straightens back out the last 10 meters, the new guy passed me and beat me by a shoe's length. I had failed. I'll never forget that feeling. No one cared after I lost, no one but me. I was angry at the new guy, angry at the coach for making me race only a 100-meter curve, and then I was angry at myself for not taking running as seriously as I could. It sucked, but I'm so glad I failed. And, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal initially, but it's the next part of the article.
Sounds traumatic.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but
Were you a freshman?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think I was. I was younger. But here, I'll continue in the article.
What a jerk coach.
It says, failure is never fun, but it can help. Right after that failure, I decided I didn't want it to happen again. I dove into the research on training plans and how to actually get faster to win the next race. However, it's weird what happened next. I found a training plan online and got right to work. But I also found a wealth of information in the process. I started to read about nutrition and other training methods. I started a notebook learning about polysaccharides, disaccharides, healthy fats, unhealthy fats. Like I said, I was a small, skinny white kid. I found out that being a skinny, small guy could be something that I could actually change through fitness and nutrition. I found a new passion, training. I love to train, and I still love to train. It is the training, the pushing myself, the results, the goals that push me and get me going. Being able to do things I couldn't do before, getting stronger, getting faster. One failure, one missed opportunity laid the foundation for who I am today and what I am truly passionate about. I couldn't be happier with a failure. I mean, what if I had won that race? And so just breaking that down, bringing that all the way back to context today, I really trace that failure alone. I mean, if you know anything about me or my website or anything, you know that like I'm all about training and programming and getting better. And I kind of forgot about that story until I was going back. And so it's like, yeah, what if I had won that race? Like maybe I wouldn't have been as interested starting in high school in like creating programs and programming and training. What if I won that race? Would I just expect things to be handed to me because I was already like naturally fast? And so I just think that that's really interesting, and I'll read the last part here. Then I go on to trying to kind of challenge the reader. And I said, failing to fail makes you a failure. And you kind of read a quote like this the other day, not pushing yourself to the next great lengths, right?
Right.
Now, you could be one of those people who has never failed at anything in your entire life, but if you tell me that, I'd either say you're a liar or someone who doesn't push themselves. I'm not saying you need to fail constantly to be a success. I'm saying you need to set your goals that are a little scary. Don't be the monkey who has his hand firmly on one branch before he'll let go and go to another. Be the monkey who sees the other branch just outside his reach, but decides to go for it anyway, knowing good and well that he could miss. Personally, I need stability. It's in my DNA, but I'm working on being able to take a little more risk, and I'm planning on taking some huge risks in a relatively short time period. I'm setting goals that could have me end up flat on my face, but I could also end up higher in a tree than when I started. And that I was ultimately talking about running into 3 Fitness full time in that paragraph because I wasn't at the time of writing this article.
Using some great analogies there too.
It's time to go for it and maybe fail up a few times. Don't be the person full of regret, regretting that you didn't try X. Be the person who went for it and didn't make it with zero regret, or the person who made it. Then my last point is failure is a lesson, not a punishment. There are 2 ways to look at failure, a lesson or punishment. When you go for something and you don't achieve it, when you don't achieve your desired result, you can think one of 2 things. Well, that's what I get for going after such a ridiculous goal. Or, well, that didn't work. What could I do differently next time? Failure is always a lesson. I encourage you to actually write down what went well and what didn't every time you run into a failure. And that's something break from the article. I really do still encourage that. Like in the military, there's always like a brief, a pre-brief, and like a debrief, right?
Yeah.
I think if you do that and with things that you're trying to achieve in your life, maybe you met 70% of your goal. Like if you do like a pre-brief and debrief with yourself after every major event or goal, I really think that can make you significantly better. And I say that. The next line is, it can only make you better. Failure is not achieving the end result. That doesn't mean you didn't achieve anything. You did something in the process. You picked up new skills, learned new things, and got a little bit better. Take your new skill set and apply it better next time. I encourage you to swing for the fences, fail a few times, but always get back up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And that was the article.
Dang, well, old Jerred seems like he was just as wise as current Jerred.
Right.
He had it going on there.
Well, it's so fun to go back and read about, and I went all the way back, and just reading some of my other stuff, I can see what my fears were and what I was most passionate about at that time and everything. It's just fun to go back and read that stuff. But this one hit hard with me just because
it changed your whole life.
Yeah, like this one little event. Like, honestly, if I would have lost that, if I would have won that race, like, I could be a completely different person in a different situation. And I bring up all of that just to share my own story, but also just to kind of talk about failure, because I don't actually think, in the broad sense, I don't think that failure is okay. And what I mean by that, I don't mean people need to be perfect, but I mean, when I really hear the words failure, I think that, you've gone all the way. Like you have failed. Like I cannot fail in taking care of my family. Right. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but that's not something I'm allowed to do. I cannot fail, and so I'll do whatever I have to make sure that I achieve that. But
complete failure is unacceptable.
Yeah, complete failure, complete and utter failure. And I think that, in all honesty, it's rare for a lot of people. And so people kind of gloss over these smaller failures because maybe they don't feel like they're actually failing all the way. A lot of people don't just think that they're failing all the time, or maybe they do. Maybe a lot of pessimistic people out there. So what I'm saying is just doing the self-analysis, being aware of what your current failures are, where you're not meeting your own expectations, you're not meeting your goals, and writing that stuff down. That's one of my big points. And what can you do to be better?
Well, something you just brought up recently, I feel like it's what's so common, something I really learned in my classes in psychology, were that, people really will glorify what they're doing and how they're doing it and who they are, but they'll really, really be pessimistic about what they've achieved and, what they're doing actually in life. Like, they'll be, I put in so much effort, I'm really doing the best I can, and maybe it's not really the best they can. And then they'll really be down on the results. Maybe the results are failures, maybe the results aren't failures, but either way, it's not good enough. So it's almost this never-ending, awfulness over and over. It's like, maybe you value yourself too high when you really should be valuing yourself a little lower, and then, being more optimistic about your possibilities. But the thing that you brought up to me in that story that just resonated with me the most is that when you fail, you're forced to change. I mean, either you're forced to change or you're just getting worse, right? I mean, if you don't do anything at all when you meet a failure, and I love the write it down, all those tips you had, definitely Mr. Practical there. But for me, it's and you can change for the bad. You can be even worse, I guess. If you fail and you decide, hey, I'm not going to do anything, or hey, I'm going to take this as a reason to be really extra down on myself, and I'm just a piece of crap. I failed at this, then you can definitely change for the bad. But you can absolutely, I think, when you have a failure, it gives you the opportunity to open your eyes, like it did for you when you got beaten that race. It was like a slap in the face where, okay, I need to change some things if I want to keep being on this, upswing that I feel like my life is going to, or be as good as I feel like I should be. So it forces you to change for the better. So that's what I love about failure. And that's, for me, I think I have I got a really short story for me. I mentioned it earlier how I need to use analogies so much, and I've realized that, and because I moved around so much. Well, I moved around as a kid every 2-3 years, and so when you're very young, that's really difficult to do. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, it's easy to make friends if you're going to be with them for 18 years, but if you're just a new kid and they're like that new guy that was racing you, I mean, even before you raced him, you're probably like, who the hell is this new guy? I don't like this guy. He's trying to take my spot, because nobody likes the new guy. So for me, it was failing on that the first time you're conscious. I don't know what, 5th grade or whatever. First failing on that first move and realizing, what, if I want to have friends, I want to be successful, if I want to, have fun, if I want to be happy, I need to figure out how to overcome these situations. And part of that maybe was using analogies, just figuring out how to relate to people, and it was a big wake up call when that first move was, I was the new kid that wasn't liked. I was the new kid that was hated. And so after that, I had to be the new kid that wasn't hated anymore. So definitely changed my life too.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you said like how you reacted. We talked about the growth mindset in a podcast a while back, is like seeing everything as growing, as moving you forward, and I'd say it's a more optimistic way to look at failure. But one of the things you said a minute ago is people downplay their success, but what they're doing they're a little more optimistic about, right?
Right.
And I read recently, and this will probably be a book recommendation here in coming weeks. I don't want to jack up the title, so I'll just save it for the book. I'll probably read this part, but the author actually challenges the reader because the whole book is about working in your unique genius, like what you're good at. And I actually heard a quote recently about that. It's like, whatever makes you odd in this world is probably your strength. That's probably your strength. And I find that really interesting. Anyway, getting back to what he challenged people to do is accept a compliment. Like, people just don't really do that. Even if like you worked your ass off, you did something really amazing, and then your coworker, your buddy, whoever is like, dude, man, you like really killed it. That was awesome. And you're like, yeah, well, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Like just immediately trying to downplay it. And in all honesty, I don't think stuff like that is humble. Sometimes people are trying to be humble, but I think it's deflecting. It's deflecting a compliment. You won't accept it, and I think it has long-term effects. So maybe another challenge. We're just full of challenges today with analogies
Right.
and fitness, and mental toughness. But if someone gives you a compliment, I mean, don't be like, damn straight, but just be like, thank you. Like I did put a lot of work into this, and I really appreciate that you noticed, that I did a good job. Accepting a compliment, it's hard for a lot of people to do.
I mean, inside your body, not just, say thank you to them because they deserve it for giving you a compliment, but inside your body, you got to like appreciate, like, hold on a second, other people in the world are noticing the work I'm doing. And it takes people a lot. Like last week, you probably realized if you did the compliment, challenge, you probably realized it's not easy to give people compliments. It doesn't just, it's usually not the first thing that comes to your head. Usually if the first thing that comes to your head is like, oh man, they haven't been working out very much recently, or ooh, why did they pick that outfit, or whatever it is, who knows? Or man, I haven't seen my friend in a long time. Hey, I just want to give you a hug. Whatever it is, like, it's probably not a compliment. So it takes a lot for people to give you those compliments. So yeah, realize that that's the world telling you that you're doing something right.
You know what I'm thinking of when I first meet someone new?
Yeah.
Don't forget their name. Don't forget their name.
I have that problem too. And that's something I feel like I should be so good at.
I'm so bad at names, man. It's so bad.
You fail at that all the time.
I do fail at that.
You need to change. You need to like write it down in your palm or something after you meet them.
Let me make sure we're good here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that does it for this podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 6. We're getting deeper into Season 2. If you're enjoying the new season, I do have a favor to ask of you. Please head on over to iTunes and leave us a positive comment and a 5-star review. It really does a lot of great things for the show, and I think I always say that, and people don't maybe actually know what I mean by that. It's not like, oh yeah, we have more stars, that's good. iTunes and Apple and their monopoly, they will, in the podcasting world, that's why, yeah, we're on Stitcher and Google Play and everything else, but majority of our subscribers come from iTunes. So I'm going to break it down here. I'm going to get a little more technical for 5 seconds. If you leave reviews, Apple's like, hey, these guys are awesome. We're going to start recommending this show to more people.
Right.
And then that's how it works. When I say this, it really helps the show out. It actually helps the show out. We get recommended to more people. We can get ranked higher in certain areas and then be found and discovered by more and more people. And so that's how you'd be helping us out. And I'd be forever grateful. Hey, you tell me that you leave a 5-star review and I see it, I will send you a thank you note on the on the emails.
So you don't just help us out, you help other people get better.
Yeah, because we're trying to change the world one human at a time.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it. That's all I have for this week. Until next week.
Thanks.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.